Hey everybody, welcome to Early Access PyCharm. I'm your host, Nafiul Islam. Today we have Aleksei Kniazev and Andrey Vlasovskikh. They are members of a very special group, i.e. folks who have been on this podcast before. And they're back again. This time, they're back because PyCharm 2021.3 is a kind of mega release for us. It's got a lot of things in there, from FastAPI support to poetry support to better Jupyter notebooks. We did it right this time, and also really cool remote development. So before we get into the specifics, I just wanted to ask Andrey, how's it been like working on this release? Usually we have a lot of promises and then we're like, some things slipped away, but this time it's like everything. Like it's like Christmas came early.
It's actually a combination of a couple of factors. First of all, we had a few things already quite for a long time in the works, like Jupyter notebooks. We started several months ago with the private EEP of our new ID DataSpell, where we tried these ideas for a redesigned Jupyter notebook experience. And so now we are finally here and we are ready to bundle it within PyCharm Professional, this Jupyter notebook experience from DataSpell, to give it to all our Python developers, basically. And as for some other features, some of them were actually contributed by third-party plugin developer. I'm speaking about poetry now. So we, in terms of development, needed only to do a couple of things to integrate their work into our product. And there were a few things that we've been working on in our PyCharm team as well. And by the way, you haven't mentioned the shared downloadable shared indexes for third-party libraries, which will be also a pleasant surprise for people who will benefit from faster indexing for their project that use a lot of various popular libraries.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. As you can understand, there's a lot of things coming in. And one of the things that's coming in that's really exciting for a lot of people is FastAPI support. And the guy behind that is none other than your friendly neighborhood Aleksei, because we have a lot of Alekseis at JetBrains. Aleksei Kniazev. So Aleksei, tell us a little bit about FastAPI support and what we mean when we say we support a framework. What did we do differently?
We started small, but in time we'll grow it to bigger support. We started with a dedicated project type for it. We created a separate run configuration for it. You can now run your FastAPI application without directly importing UV-corn or doing any of the stuff. Just point it to your file and we will run it for you. Yeah, we also added this cool thing called Endpoints, which basically takes all your FastAPI and Flask route strings and transforms them into yet another significant place in your code. So you can navigate to them. You could use them in code completion, not only in Python, but also in HTTP files, in JavaScript files, and anywhere else.
That is what I found to be really fantastic, that you have this connection from just strings, and that PyCharm understands that these are things of value. These are actual objects and symbols that you can link to in different places. But FastAPI is not the only one. You also are getting Flask endpoint support, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So basically anything with a HTTP URL will be able to eventually, maybe one day, because Paul dreams about this, in Pyramid as well. So can you just tell me a little bit more about how endpoints themselves work and how you're able to create these kinds of connections, between just text, really? It's just a string of text.
Well, it all comes down to how we process the program that we analyze. So basically, we have to analyze the code in order to provide you with completion, with inspection results, and all the other useful stuff. And while we can already do this for Python code, because our engine knows Python pretty well, so it can provide like type inference and completion and all the stuff. Providing useful information for simple strings, that's a place where a really intelligent tool like PyCharm can really shine. So just because we know some stuff about your project, that it's a FastAPI project, and we know that FastAPI defines its routes this way, we can now use this information not just in this place, but in any other completely separate JavaScript file.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, it feels magical, because you just magically know that these strings are somehow connected. So that's definitely something that I'm really looking forward to. Andrey, going back to poetry, this is a different kind of story than what we're usually used to. Usually, IntelliJ IDEA builds something, we just take it from them, and then we just say, "Hey, we built it." But this time, there is a very interesting story about a very heavy PyCharm user and PyCharm contributor called Aono Kodai. So, could you tell us a little bit about his story and how we eventually integrated the project into PyCharm?
Yeah, definitely. Aono Kodai is a contributor to our ecosystem. He is an author of the Pydantic plugin for PyCharm. And basically, he was using poetry at that time. And we were at that time not sure yet if we wanted to already include poetry as an emerging package manager, because there in Python, you get a bunch of tools for managing your dependencies, packages. There are all sorts of tools available. Some of them become popular over time, some of them really not. And so he started actually very early on with poetry, with the support. And it was actually an open source thing even back then, because he started based on our own code base for ppen, which is also open source under Apache 2. He started his poetry support plugin as a fork of our ppen integration. And we helped a bit with providing the necessary extension points for our product to plug it into PyCharm. And basically, we now see that poetry gets a lot of adoption, and the plugin itself is really good. It gets very positive reviews on our plugins marketplace. And it was logical for us to provide this experience out of the box, because it's like a part of your first experience with opening and interacting with your project. We needed to analyze your Python interpreter, your Python dependencies. And it's beneficial for a lot of users to have bundled within PyCharm. So we now will take care of this plugin. We will develop it further. And I'm already a happy poetry user with this plugin, but this is like the first step. We have just integrated the plugin, and we have further ideas on how to improve the support eventually.
What I like about PyCharm and our approach to a lot of things, and this goes way back, in the very beginning, it was a big deal just to have code completion on module names, import re.match. And those are things that we know about, but then PyCharm went a step further and was able to determine the types of variables based on our engine. So we just kept making it better. And so going forward, I'm pretty sure poetry will also keep getting better as a plugin. So my next thing that I'm also pretty excited about is our new Jupyter support. And it's interesting that you say that we created a new product for it, which is essentially DataSpell. Can you tell me, did we need breathing room to go back to the drawing board and just figure out how to do Jupyter support in a correct way? So why was there like a separate product, and how and why is it being integrated back into PyCharm?
Yeah, it's only a part of the story actually about our desire to give better Jupyter notebook experience to developers. The other part was that in the Python community, we basically have at least two different major groups. They are developers who work mostly on code, and data scientists who work mostly on data and interact with data. And for them, code is only sort of a means of getting their results, training their models, etc. And for some time, we tried to fit all of this functionality into PyCharm Professional with our scientific mode and with some other features of the product. But it was really focused towards this developer scenario where you have your project, you have your virtual labs, you have your isolation, you mostly work on code. There is not a lot of interactivity about data, about visualization, about data frames, etc. And we've been uncomfortable with this separate mode that was there in PyCharm. It's still there, by the way, but probably it will eventually not be a part of the product, because now we have a separate product that is dedicated for data scientists, for the workflows that a typical data scientist. For example, you can open any folder, you can attach basically a folder to your window of your IDE, and you can have a sort of a workspace environment where you have all sorts of folders you're currently working on. You quickly switch between different projects, and it's a more productive, more suitable environment for data science work. Speaking about Jupyter, we actually started with our Jupyter support in PyCharm, I guess, in 2015, where we just had a few experiments on how we can possibly integrate IPython notebooks, as they were called back then, with it wasn't that successful, but we got some results. But eventually we came up with this idea that a notebook could be represented as code, basically, with some fake text separators between your Jupyter Notebook cells. And that was the experience we had. The current version of PyCharm Professional, and basically it required that your Jupyter Notebook is represented as a basically Python file. And next to it, to the right, was the panel with all the inputs and outputs rendered as HTML. And even though it was a good idea from the code perspective, because you can be more productive with your text editing actions, for example, if you use, for example, a beam emulation plugin for PyCharm, you can quickly do a lot of text editing based on your cells, merge them all together or whatever. But it felt unnatural, and especially it was really not the best approach for data scientists who got accustomed to notebook-like representations of their work. And basically, we took this chance when we started working on DataSpell to redesign this experience. Now we think that even for developers, not only for data scientists, this experience is much better. And that's why we decided to put it there in PyCharm Professional.
Absolutely. Ultimately, a subset of the PyCharm team has been working on DataSpell this whole time. And what we're essentially doing, just merging a branch back into the main. It's not as simple as that. I'm sure you've had to deal with a lot of merge conflicts, but I'm glad that we're here at this point in time. It's actually interesting. So some of the biggest complaints that we've had over time has been about remote development. And this time around, I feel like, and remote development is one of them. We've had complaints about data science as well. I feel like we're solving so many problems with one release this time around. It's, hey, where's all the stuff that you've been promising us? Well, here it is. Can you handle it? So it's quite interesting. So the next thing is remote development. And it's not just Code With Me. We've released Code With Me as well. But we have a new thing called JetBrains Gateway. It's still in beta. We're going to release it with PyCharm this time around. But it is something that people have been wanting for a long time, which is basically a headless version of PyCharm. So you have PyCharm on your server, and you have something like a thin client on your computer or your laptop or what have you. And essentially, all the heavy lifting is done by your beefy server up in the cloud somewhere. Can you just let me know what your thoughts are on this, both of you?
Let me start. Actually, there are a few benefits to this idea of having the main engine run on your server. Not only the one that you've mentioned about the fact that now your code analysis also runs on the server, therefore you can spin up a new cloud machine that is fast and is capable of indexing a large project, for example, or you can do some maybe pre-indexing activities. You can have your ID running and you can connect to it from time to time because you don't have to close it and so on.
Think about it. There's no fan anymore. Your fan won't spin up. Isn't that amazing?
It is cool. Yeah, indeed. There is also another thing we wanted to cover with this. It's actually from the security point of view, because it's an important factor, and especially for larger companies, but not only for them. Sometimes it is sort of the policy for them that you are not allowed to work with the code base on your laptop where you can lose it, or you can, I don't know, just compromise it somehow. Someone can approach your notebook while you're, I don't know, in your bathroom at home or whatever. I don't know. And basically here,
somebody could just steal it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're there at your coffee shop and you go to the toilet and then you're back and it's gone forever.
Exactly. And this might be a big security breach. Therefore, companies mandate that people actually work on their code bases remotely. And there are ways to do that. And PyCharm didn't support that because for our remote SSH interpreters, you had to still have working copy of your Git repository on your local machine, and then we synchronized it back to the server. But still, some code, definitely like the whole repository on your local environment. In this new approach, you just connect to a machine via SSH, and this is it, basically. The code lives there. You only have your code on a local machine only for visualization purposes when you open some specific file. And as soon as you close it, it's gone. It's no longer here. So it's much more secure, and I hope some big companies will find it really cool and useful for their remote. I guess these are two main factors: performance and security.
Yeah, I just think who cares about companies? The important thing is fan speed. And the other thing is because I always make fun of Alexei because he doesn't have enough RAM on his computer. Alexei, you won't have any RAM problems anymore. Isn't that great?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm super excited about Gateway because remote scenarios are as popular as ever and will continue to grow. And honestly, I'm in awe at the fact that so much work had to be done to adapt the architecture of IntelliJ platform and of PyCharm that was designed without the remote scenario in mind to actually work remotely. That seems super cool.
Yeah, I think a long time ago, Dmitry Jemerov started a project called Project Centaur, which was adapting IntelliJ into more of a remote-friendly environment, if I recall correctly. But then
sort of a separation between the analysis process and the front end.
Yeah, and now we've just somehow managed to do that, maybe even unintentionally. So that's great. It's amazing when a plan comes together.
Thanks to our Code With Me team, because basically the technology is the same as with the Code With Me plugin. And this technology allows you not only to work remotely on your project, but also work together remotely on a project, which is very cool, actually.
Exactly. I was talking to Kirill a few days ago, and Kirill Skrigan is essentially, for those who don't know, he's the brains behind the Code With Me plugin, and he's the lead for remote development here at JetBrains. But before that, he was team lead at Rider, and he was actually telling me with a lot of pride yesterday or day before yesterday that Rider was actually the first distributed IDE because they had a separate front end and a back end process because they had to. They needed it because of the way that the .NET runtime works. So they built their own protocol and a whole other bunch of mumbo jumbo that I honestly don't understand. But it's impressive when you have different teams working on different products and somehow, somewhere, something becomes useful to everybody. That's just cool.
I agree.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff this time around. So a long time ago, I said we had shared indexes, but shared indexes, those were for the Python standard library, if I'm not mistaken. And we changed the way we index things. This time around, we're actually getting shared indexes for third-party libraries as well. What do you exactly mean by a third-party library? Because I know that for some third-party libraries, their indexes come with PyCharm, right? Or am I wrong?
Actually, no. We only bundle indexes for the standard library, only for that. And for third-party libraries, by third-party libraries, first of all, the popular packages on PyPI. We basically have our own indexing infrastructure. That basically, first of all, I would like to remind everyone what indexing is. Indexing is a process of looking through all the Python files in a specific folder or in a specific project and creating a table of every symbol, all the classes, all the functions, all the usages of these functions and so on that are there in the project. And it allows instant go to class, go to function functionality. It is the engine behind our code refactorings and so on. And even though it might be a bit tedious to wait until the indexing is finished, when you open a new project, for example, or you get a lot of updates from your VCS, still all the goodies that you have in PyCharm from the code analysis perspective, good code completion, good refactoring support, quick navigation, it all comes from indexing, basically. So we now have this indexing infrastructure, and we index on our own servers popular PyPI packages based on various factors of their popularity. And then we offer you an ability to download these indexes for you if you use these libraries in your project. So it's basically an opt-in feature. You have to agree to, for example, download indexes once or always download indexes. It's safe from the security perspective because it's only the information about what functions are there in the libraries. It's sort of for static code analysis only. And it gives you faster indexing because downloading files is quicker than calculating all the indexes on your local machine. And even for this remote scenario we were talking about, still good idea to have your indexes because it's just faster.
I'm just glad that somehow, in some magical way, JetBrains has coalesced into reducing fan speed. If you think about it, with remote development, with shared indexes, it's all about reducing fan speed. And I'm just very happy about that.
Yeah, it's a compromise basically between the depth of your code analysis and the experience that you have. And we definitely don't want to have this experience where it's super fast, but you don't have any help from your ID in terms of completion and so on. We want to have a healthier balance here. And we now try to shift it a bit towards performance, still while providing you with all the code analysis, code and side benefits.
Exactly. And I just love the fact that we cheated. Like, we didn't actually make indexing faster, but we made indexing faster.
Yeah, indeed. I should mention that specifically for code completion, you can do fine without indexing, actually. So it's like not the most like prominent feature that utilizes indexing. But for refactorings, you definitely need to have your indexes in place, because for code completion, you only analyze the only one reference. And it's relatively cheap to go through all the paths of the assignment to this variable, to all the imports that you have. Yes, you'll have your sort of dependency tree, but only from a single source. Therefore, strictly for code completion, you can go away without any indexing. You will be fine. But for quick go-to definitions, for more precise refactorings especially, and our users love our rename refactorings, our move refactorings, change signature. My favorite, of course, is rename. I do it all the time. Now that we have the inline rename functionality, you can just start like renaming your variable.
I was just about to say that, because you don't really think about refactoring as renaming a variable or moving a method or a function somewhere else. But in order to intelligently do that, and for PyCharm to know, hey, this symbol is moving from here to here, this symbol has changed its name, you need to have an index of everything there. And PyCharm constantly indexes your own code base, and that's fast enough in pretty much almost all use cases. It's just that when you dump, I don't know, tens of thousands of lines of third-party code, it gets a little messy. So now we're just going to send you all the indexes from the cloud. Anyways,
popular indexes from the cloud. Not all of them, unfortunately, but still popular indexes for libraries that are big enough for download speed to be faster than indexing speed.
I just love how you're absolutely precise and always try to be 100% correct. I think it's the most amazing trait. But anyways, both of you, thank you so much for joining. This has been a very fun episode, mostly because I got to tease Andrey throughout the episode. But anyways, thank you all for joining, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
And thank you for listening.